Welcome everyone to our HUR Australia webinar, first one for 2024. And today we're just going to discuss health and wellness, the power of exercise in maintaining best health. In the spirit of reconciliation, HUR Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. My name is Tuuri Karahari-Husman. I am from HUR Australia and I will be your MC today, as I have been for the last 4 years. It is amazing to think that we did start 4 years ago. Now, today's topic is something we've been really discussing throughout the 4 years. It is health and wellness. Whilst we have different topics throughout, we always really try to discuss what should we be doing, how should we exercise, and how should we live to really have our best health and how we can live the longest and a long, happy life, whatever we do. So there are different factors. And different age groups depending on if you're children, how you should exercise. And once we get to the 50s, things get a bit more serious. But once we get into our 70s, things get even more serious. Now, before we get started, some house rules. Now, as always, during our webinar, all our microphones will be muted and all your videos will be disabled, so you can just focus on listening to us. But in the bottom of the page, you can write comments in the comments box, and also there's a thumbs up area. And also there is a Q&A section, which is really for you to ask questions. So throughout our talks, if you have any questions, something comes to your mind, please write your questions down, as then we can take it up in our panel discussions in the end. And if we run out of time, we can also answer those questions even later. There's also a thumbs up button, which means that if you can see a question for someone else that you're keen to hear the answer for, please click on the thumbs up, and then that sort of shows me the importance of your question, and then I can make sure that we've definitely answered that one. Now, today we have another wonderful guest speaker, a very familiar face to many of you. So Dr. Tim Henwood, who's the group manager at Southern Cross Care in Northern Territory, South Australia and Victoria. So Tim's going to be our guest speaker later on. But before we get to that, I will share just some of the slides that I have just about health and wellness and some of the basic principles that we talk about. Now, let me just go and share my slides. Just give me a moment and then I will get started. Let's see, there we go. So just a few comments and thoughts about just health and wellness and really what we are talking about when we have this topic. Now, World Health Organization has defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So we're not just being healthy does not mean that we just don't have any disease, but there's quite a different perspectives of health. And at the same time, they discuss wellness as the optimal state of health of individuals and groups. So basically, really what we are talking about is activities and choices that we make. What do we do to control the risk factors? And also, what do we do to include our lifestyle? What are the beneficial factors, such as nutrition, exercise, and social interactions? We can't interfere in our genes or anything like that, but we can definitely interfere. What are we doing to control our disease factors, and what do we do to increase our health by eating the right foods and exercising in a particular way? Now, the National Institute of Wellness has also defined wellness as follows. So wellness is considered as conscious, self-directed, and also evolving process of achieving our full potential. So it's really what we do on our way to keeping our health. It is multidimensional, and it is holistic, encompassing the lifestyle, mental, and the spiritual well-being, and also the environment. And also they consider that wellness is positive and affirming, and also contributes to living a long and healthy life. So health is what we're trying to get to by living the best life. And wellness is really the activities that we do. What do we leave out? Such as trying not to eat really bad foods for us. So trying to avoid sugar and overloading of foods, and try to increase more protein and vitamins, and also having the right amount of exercise. Now, it doesn't matter what age we are, but exercise matters. So, World Health Organization has, and together with American College of Sports Medicine and all the different organizations, they're really giving us the guidelines of how much should we do exercise. And this is a nice sort of little pamphlet that World Health Organization has put out to discuss exercise. How much should we exercising and what should we doing? So the baseline is saying, let's try to increase something. And if we look sort of from the left, what should we do? Just try to replace some of the automation and then starting that any exercise is better than nothing. However, that's we should try to aim what is sort of right for our age groups and what we do. So it gives this guide, this little pamphlet gives what to, information on what should we do for as adults and older adults. What about children and also our teenagers? And then giving really the advice on how often we should exercise, how many minutes we should exercise, and what kind of exercise. And then if we look at age groups, I mean, with children, we really talk about, and youth, we find children talk about motor development and our skills development and just creating a healthy lifestyle. And these days with the youth, we really talk a lot about mental health linked to screen time and also the amount of exercise. And sadly, we are using internet at the moment and we're using technology, but we can see a lot of negative impact on the screen times and the amount of technology. And there's a lot of research in youth on this going back to basics and really going back to writing and trying to limit the screen time. But let's focus a bit more on the older groups. And even though we know now, like the previous slide shows that we have these exercise and physical activity guidelines. But if you look at the data, what we're presenting here is the Australian data from 2022, which is published end of last year. And it shows that even though we know what we should be doing, we're really, really not doing what we should be doing. And if you can see, this is now the different the piles are there. If we did enough of physical activity and if we had more than 5 days and also if we did strength training. But the blue line there is the line of how many people met the guidelines. And we can see that whilst the 18 to 24-year-olds, they are reaching nearly 30%. But as we get older, that graph, the blue line comes lower and lower. And in the end, it's less than 20% of people who actually meet the physical activity guidelines. And if we then think about what are the consequences of this, these might look a bit like scare tactics. But if you think of the 50s, what should we be doing? So in our 50s, we really should be exercising just to keep up our good health, our strength and mobility, then also maintain and increase our muscle and bone mass, but also prevent chronic diseases. But we have a problem. The problem is inactivity. And already in 2012, The Lancet was published a full journal, 2012. This is now 12 years ago, about what happens with inactivity, and already then said that inactivity is one of the biggest burdens of disease we have globally. And this is the data from 2022 in Australia. This is the amount of how much sitting time do we do. And if we look at the age groups of between over the 25, I mean, in 18 to 24, we still have less of the mostly sitting, it's still walking. This is working tasks. But as soon as we hit the 25 and further after that, we spend most of our working time sitting. That's leading to inactivity. If we then look at this, this is from 2012. So Australian Institute of Health and Welfare then published the data. And this is basically, looking at the health of how much does physical inactivity accounting. We know that globally, physical inactivity accounts for 10 to 20% of burden of disease. In Australia, physical inactivity is responsible for 19% of diabetes, 16% of bowel and uterine cancer, 14% of dementia, 11% for breast cancer and also coronary heart disease, and 10% of stroke. You have all the other factors. This is just what inactivity does. So it's a huge factor in our burden of disease. So it really is vital that we start exercising. Now, let's focus a bit of the older adults. What are the guidelines there? What does it say then, once we get a little bit older? The guidelines do state that we should be exercising a total of 150 minutes in a week with the preferred 30 minutes daily. We should also start including strength training 2 or 3 times a week, and also then including stretching and also balance exercises. But another important factor that I'll start talking about here is our protein intake. I'll come back in the follow next slide, but the protein intake for adults between 18 to 70 is 1 gram per kilo weight of body weight per day. And once we get over that, over 70, 1.2 grams of kilo weight per kilogram body weight per day. And some articles even published last year even talked about up to 16 grams of protein. Matt, why do we talk about this? Why is protein then so important together with the strength training? Protein really is the largest organ system in our body. And our skeletal muscles, so the muscles we train when we do strength training, then store almost 50% of the protein. So consequently, then our muscles then are not just our main movers. Yes, they are. They're the things that made us move. But they're a huge physiological factor because they're storing the protein that then allows us to, to maintain health and also prevent disease. So we're trying to eat protein in order to grow the muscle, and yet then the muscles then become the protein reserves, because protein is there to build and repair our cells. So it doesn't matter what happens to you, whether it's building the muscle or if you get ill and you're trying to get healthy from the illness, you need to build new build new cells in order to get rid of the disease. That's why we need to understand then that our protein, our muscles and protein together, sort of our reserve bank of health. We eat protein to create muscle, and then we store that protein in the muscle. So those two together really is our reserve bank of health, because it's the combination of strength training and protein intake that allows us to stay healthy. Again, it's written there, the protein builds muscles that then become the protein reserves, the banks we then can withdraw from when our body needs to fight illness or rebuild cells. Now, as you can see, I'm talking about banks and money here. So I made another slide because we often consider our health, but do we consider our wealth? Vice versa. So we often talk about, we understand that we need to save money, but do we really understand how much we need to think about our health in order to think of the future? So let's consider health and wealth, nearly the same word, just changing one letter there. So if we think about our piggy bank, all of us as kids, we used to have piggy banks and we put a little coin there once we have some. So that's sort of basic banking. And also then we could consider, okay, any exercise is good exercise. And yes, any exercise is good exercise. But that's, and we eat generally good food and we do a bit of exercise, but that's our sort of piggy bank style. We then take it a little bit further. So we might go into a bank and might look into a little bit on what we're doing. So this is then could be similar as to we actually start investing in strength training. We no longer say that, okay, I'll go to walk, I'll do a bit of gardening. But now we start understanding a little bit like, okay, I think I should do some strength training as well. And then you put a bit more focus on nutrients and you start considering, okay, vegetables, multiple colors, there's my protein. Do I get a protein all the time? Maybe adding some eggs for breakfast and adding a bit more protein. So that's our improved ranking. But then if we really want to go to stock market, most of us are encouraged to go to stock market and we put money in our super and plan for the future and retirement. So that's sort of really thinking like, let's get serious. So we're actually investing in our health. You got a stock market to invest in your wealth. And now we go to the stock market in health-wise and we actually start doing a proper strength training. So we know from research that in order to get the best benefits, we've really got to do prescribed exercises, prescribed strength training to really get the best benefits and everything else. And we need to, have an appropriate protein intake. Because then if we do that, then we can do this. See, they put a little arrow there. So that's our illness. So we know if you're illness, you're inactive, muscles disappear pretty quickly as well. Then we can afford to lose our muscles because we're building the reserve banks. We can have the little dips there because that's us using the reserves to recover from illness. So therefore, we can actually have the constant growth allowing us then to have the withdrawals. So we can get ill because we know that we have the reserve bank there. So what we can then do, just a little blinch about, strength training. So if you go to gym, most of us may go to gym, we have a program that we follow. But then it's important to consider also then that even if we do home-based exercises, we can monitor them. Just an example. So normally, if there's any of the HUR users, you know that we have the circuit, you get the data from our, wherever you're training. But also now we have the HUR app, which means that then you can actually do the exercises at home They can be similar as to, you can put them in the same cloud as where you have your data, and you can really have prescribed exercises even at home. So you don't have to be, and many of us travel and we get busy, but if you don't get to the gym, do your exercise at home. And yes, it's okay to take a walk with your friends, that's all right. And it's good to have the rest days, but keep in mind that sometimes it's better to be progressive to get the best benefit. Now, to discuss the benefits even more, it's time to introduce our wonderful guest speaker. So our guest speaker, again, like I said before, is quite a familiar face to many of you. So we're talking about Dr. Tim Henwood, who is a group manager of research and development, Southern Cross Care. Tim is a special population exercise physiologist with a wide research publication record on targeted exercise program for adults 65 years, with a specific interest also in the older adults with complex healthcare needs. Tim is a very strong advocate in this area, and you have seen Tim talking also in different conferences. Last time I saw Tim talking at the Victorian Healthcare Week, just less than 6 months ago, about the restorative care. And I know exactly how well Tim can talk about. He's one of the most charismatic speakers. So this is in mind. I'm going to start talking right now. I'm going to let Tim take over and talk for half an hour and give his best advice, because I know that he can do that. Thank you, Tim. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Tori, for the great introduction, and set me up well with a little bit of an introduction about what my talk will be about. Tori's actually dipped into some topics that I won't dip into in as much detail. You'll see my opening slide. Like, one of the things which omitted from the title is this talk will very much be about older adults, but I'm assuming most of those attending will already understand that. And if you do understand that, you'll also be very aware of the impact that the ageing population is going to have, independent of which country you live in. So we know that our populations are ageing, and that most countries are going to be around the quarter mark by 2040, if not earlier, with some very rapidly approaching that quarter of their population over 65 years of age. And we also know that with that, we will have greater prevalence of disease and disability, which will have a great financial impact on our health systems. The rates of dementia will start to increase, and with that rate of dementia, we'll have all those sorts of staffing, care, accommodation needs that are really these people are going to need support in. Already, we're seeing larger and larger numbers of the population over 65 living. Put on full screen presentation. I don't know how to do that, Ari. I'm not sure how to change my screen. Ari wants me to change it to full screen. I don't know how to do that. You guys will, I'd rather get on with it than muck around for the next 5 minutes trying to do that. More and more people living with multiple comorbidities and living into late life with multiple comorbidities. And with multiple comorbidities, they're also having multiple medication regimes. And all this, as I mentioned before, is putting an increased pressure on the hospital systems and the medical systems. With, you guys probably realise that most of you can't get in to see a GP for weeks on end. And if you do, you're getting a 15-minute hi, thank you very much, here's your prescription, off you go, on to the next person sort of service. So the primary drivers in this increasing poor health are some of the things that Turi's already mentioned. The high levels of physical inactivity that most of us are achieving in our day-to-day lives. And I think it really spreads across a lot of populations. Like, I know I'm very active outside of my working environment, but I sit for long periods during my working day. And that then transfers through to older adults, particularly when they have things like osteoarthritic knees or bad backs, or are carrying too much weight, or have a level of depression which drives them to sit and ponder for the entire day. And Tori did mention protein as within that poor diet. But a lot of us are eating cheap, accessible, easy to get to foods, things that don't require cooking. And the other end of the scale as well, we see a lot more older adults who actually are just not eating enough food. They might have toast for breakfast and toast for dinner and be lucky enough to go out for a counter lunch during the day. And even I've met people over the years who get meals brought in, and they'll spread that meal over 2 days because their appetite's been compromised. but we really need to consider that level of protein, carbohydrates, fats and fibres that go into our body on a daily basis. And then the impact, as I mentioned, is the impact onto our health system. And finally, just referencing the graph on the right, and Turi did mention this, like the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare figures are suggesting that only 1 in 10 Australians are achieving the national guidelines for physical activity engagement. So we've tried to address this before. You know, we had this great campaign in the 70s, Norm, very lazy, life, you know, let's get active, all those sorts of things. And in that campaign, we did have great success within Australia. But that campaign lasted for a handful of years. And then following that, we've seen our obesity numbers increase and increase and increase, where we've got a dangerous number of the population who are in the overweight or obese and even teetering onto the extreme obese level. And even with the evidence that we've produced, and I'll look at some evidence with you very, very soon, even with the evidence that we've produced, still a number of factors have just lingered around older adults for years and years. And one of the most amazing ones is the rate of falls. You know, after 65, 1 in 3 older adults will fall annually. After 80, 1 in 2 adults will fall, and most of them will fall multiple times in the year. You know, those figures have been solidly there for the past 30 odd years, and even with all the evidence, that has not changed. So what is happening to older adults? What's the impact of aging and sedentary behaviour on people's well-being? So we know from evidence that we have increased levels of sedentary behaviour, up to 8 hours a day in your average over 65, and up to 20 hours a day in sitting or in lying for people once they're over 80, or sitting, lying and sleeping, rather. And that starts to have somewhere in our mid-30s, early as our mid-30s, an impact on our muscle mass. It's not just the sedentary activity, it's low protein, bad diets, culminating factors. But we start to lose muscle mass, and then in our 60s, 70s and 80s, our loss of muscle strength really starts to accelerate, and likewise, so does our loss in muscle power. And our power, you think about that as our ability to produce force at varying velocities, not necessarily our fastest velocity. And a simple example is our ability to stand from a chair. To do it successfully, we need to coordinate muscles between our ankles and our hips at a variety of velocities. When those muscles are moving in unison, we come to a successful stand. When they're not, we can't stand, or we're at risk of falls. Changes in our muscle competency also impacts things like our aerobic system, where to get oxygen to working muscles, we need to work our heart and our lungs harder and faster and more. We also have changes in our metabolic rate, because every one of our muscles is turning over energy. When we have less muscle, when we use less muscle, when we have less muscle contractions, we also then have changes in our metabolic rate, which leads to our body fat increase. Our blood volume, because like our metabolic rate, all of our muscles are filled with blood, and blood is pumping through them at all times. When we have less muscle, we have less blood volume. And then when we have less blood volume, we have less nutrient carrying capacity to transfer valuable antioxidants and nutrients into places like our brains and our hearts. And then our bone mineral density. And I always find it amazing. There's been so much research into osteoporosis, but the limited amount into sarcopenia and frailty. In that, our muscles are the levers through which our bones work. When we apply bigger, stronger forces through our muscles, that transfers into our bones, and our bones remodel more positively. And when we sit for longer, we have less muscle contractions, then our bones remodel and get smaller and smaller and more brittle and more brittle and more susceptible to fracture. And all of this then culminates into our quality of life, a very subjective term, but does imply that when you can't run, jump, leap, get down with your grandkids, work in your garden, live in your own house, you have a compromised quality of life. And then the culminations of this are things like surgical complications, both after surgeries and during surgeries, an increased risk of dementia and other cognitive declines and mental health diseases, an increased incidence of falls, which I mentioned before, and a decrease in our functional ability, which is basically saying our inability to actively participate in our communities, around our homes, and the next stage for a lot of people is that move to a fully dependent care scenario. Some of this is quite easily demonstrated by the World Health Organization's life course model that you see on the left. What that basically says, the first third of our life, we get fitter, faster, and stronger. And then the lifestyle choices that we've made will start to culminate on top of us and drive us down through the blue line through our disability threshold, making it harder to remain independent. But if we get enough exercise, if we have the right diet, we don't drink too much, don't smoke at all, don't have too much stress, get enough sleep, then our lives can be on that yellow line and we can push back on disability till the day we die. Importantly, doesn't matter where you are on the blue line, you can push back on disability with the right level of intervention. And those two primary interventions are exercise supported by diet. So the evidence is irrefutable for exercise. And you can see the date this was retrieved was over 6 months ago. Like if I went into a PubMed search and used that just simple search term, benefits of exercise for older adults, I get over 17,000 publications today. And that's dating back to 50 years. And so the evidence has been there, but it's never really floated to the top. And when it does float to the top, it's a bit of a fad. But we're seeing more and more older adults actually engage. There was some Australian Bureau of Statistics data came out the other day that said exercise engagement is actually doubled amongst older adults over the past 20 years, but it's still not reflected in adherence to the guidelines, as I mentioned before. And going back to the evidence is strong for a cost benefit to being in the preventative space rather than the treatment space. It's there in relation to reduction in frailty and treatment of people who have reached a point of frailty, and then also the cost benefit in that space as well. And previously as an academic, I've participated in the production of a lot of the evidence that, well, no, not a lot of it, given there's 17,000, some of the evidence that actually makes up those 17,000 publications. Some of the things that have had greatest influence is the Muscling Up Against Disability study, where we used resistance training in community dwelling older adults with aged care needs and services. And we saw that after 6 months, they were fitter, faster and stronger, had reduced mental health and improved other physical and functional outcomes. And the Sunbeam project, where we replicated pretty much the Muscling Up Against Disability stuff in the residential aged care settings, and showed that after 6 months, people had a 55% reduction in falls in comparison to the residential aged care participants who had the usual care control program. So all very, very big, impressive outcomes. So even though this evidence is incredibly strong, even though it's been around for 50 years, one of the worst employers of exercise as a preventative services for older adults is the aged care sector. And what we're looking at here in this slide is some data that came down from one of the Stuart Brown reports, which looked at what home care package dollars were being utilised on for home care package clients. So just a brief overview for home care packages. So levels 1 to 4, level 1 the lowest and the $9,000, level 4 the highest, $52,000, where the government funds that client to that level so that they can support them to access services that keep them independent within the community. What the graph's showing you is that on average, 5 hours per fortnight of home care package funding is dedicated to domestic assistance and personal care to keep that client independent. And only 10 minutes is dedicated to allied health and therapy. And I can assume that that's probably podiatry, because as you realise, there's not much an exercise physiologist or a physiotherapist can do in that 10 minutes to actually promote independence per fortnight for an older client. So Southern Cross Care have spent the last 7 odd years bucking this trend, going against that trend of promoting care services for independence, but also matching the care services that we deliver to clients with independence defining health and wellness services. So our health and wellness arm within Southern Cross Care is community facing and focused on prevention, reablement and restorative care services. Our primary goal is to keep people living in their home for longer, and we've got a ton of positive data that shows that our model of care is working. In relation to our model, it's evidence-based, so it's a lot of translation of what I've seen and read and been part of in my academic career into current practice. It's very person-centered, so everything's done in communication with the clients, and it's a best practice model of care. And we classify it as a best practice model of care because we know that we're incorporating evidence into practice and taking clients on a journey that leads to higher levels of independence. We use a holistic interdisciplinary model. So we bring all of our different 9 disciplines together and we talk about a client's needs. Even if one of those disciplines is not in the client's care plan, they can still contribute from a dietetics or a social work or an occupational therapist point of view. What could we do to improve the client's health journey? And then on a regular basis, we care plan with the client to make sure whatever's in their care plan is focused on them getting more independent and remaining more independent. And at the end of that journey is always group exercise, because we understand that no matter what we do initially as a stimulus to improve the client's well-being, we need to then help the client maintain that, and maintenance comes through the provision of exercise. So just a few figures about us. So we're currently catering for about over 3,000 clients in our membership who have an average age close to 80 years of age. We offer about 4,500 individual group presentations per month. So that's 4,500. So that's over the 3,000 clients turning up on a regular basis to undertake group exercise. And I'll show you some more data about that soon. We have over 12,000 one-on-ones across those 9 disciplines. And even though I won't dig into it too much, we offer about 6,000 respite hours per month. And in respite, importantly, we employ the same exercise model of care that we do in our health and wellness services. Clients attend our respite cottages and they'll do up to or greater than, so half an hour or greater of exercise guided by one of our health and wellness promoters on a daily basis. Go back one. So these are all the different arms that we have under the health and wellness model. We have the health and wellness centres. We have 3 very large centres and then 3 regional centres, and they're catering for clients in the community and living within the Southern Cross Care communities as well. We have the respite services that I just mentioned, 5 different cottages offering day and overnight, and an in-community buddy service. We have our short-term restorative care program, and I'll describe to you a little more detail towards the end of the presentation. So I'll leave a bit more about the explanation about STRC till then. Transition care is a from hospital to home program, trying to help a client improve their functional wellbeing to return to independence. And then we've had our added arms. So our out and about program is our social engagement program, and we use that as a motivator for clients. So if you want to go on tours, you need to have a certain level of functional wellbeing. So to get on those tours, we're going to help you through exercise and allied health to actually improve your wellbeing, your mobility, ambulation, reduce your falls risk, so you can go on some of the higher mobility tours. And we've built quite a big research arm, and I think this is why recently I've moved from the role as the Group Manager for Health and Wellness to the Group Manager for Research and Development, because we're doing so many great programs. The organisation has a strong vision to actually help other people do those programs by disseminating some of this information. And then our telehealth program, which reaches out into regional South Australia to support clients who can't make it to one of our health and wellness services or can't make it to any allied health, but still would benefit from exercise and have that technology provision. So our model is not that complicated by any means. We have a very big front door for referrals, and I'll break them down for you very soon. But independent of what referral pathway you come in on, the first thing you do is a comprehensive battery of assessments with us, where we look at your functional wellbeing, your physical wellbeing, your mental health, your social engagement, your frailty, quality of life, and then we talk to you about your goals and your needs and your intentions with engaging in a health and wellness pathway. So That data is then brought to one of our case conferencing events. We talk about best health pathways for the clients, and we come back to the client with a care plan. The care plan will have a focus on physical well-being, but might also have those components of mental health and social engagement. Social engagement might be an art group. The mental health might be something like a think gym, or even a respite service for clients who are starting to experience a level of cognitive decline, or might have a partner who's starting to have some sort of level of cognitive decline. And at the end of our primary pathway, the aim is, as I mentioned before, to get you into that group exercise to prolong your functional well-being, maintain the gains that you've made, and also increase your social engagement with a group of like-minded people who are also on a similar trajectory. So no matter what happens during that trajectory, if you fall off, if you go to hospital, if you have a planned operation, if you have a break from health and wellness, we just circle back around to the beginning and we get you back into that pathway till we can return you to that ongoing exercise participation. And then from there, we fan out to other services, whether clients need transport, social engagement, or mental health, which I've mentioned before, and then the raft of other services which are available through Southern Cross Care. So we take a variety of referrals. The My Aged Care system is quite a large referrer to the health and wellness service. There's a lot of people who walk in the front door, use their private health insurance to get involved in our services. We get a lot of external GP and other provider referrals as well, other aged care providers and other practitioners who are referring to us because they know clients need ongoing support. And then we get all the external from Southern Cross Care, other aged care providers, who then are referring back into these pathways as well. First thing we do is we set you up with a service booking where we plan for you to come in for that comprehensive assessment I spoke of before, and then we collect all that data to fan outwards to your care plan with that provision of getting you onto ongoing exercise at the end. In relation to across our disciplines, you can see exercise physiology as the AEP is our primary service delivery. And that's AEPs doing one-on-ones in homes, amongst our short-term restorative care, our transition care programs, and then primarily in our health and wellness clinics as one-on-ones with clients. Physio, we do quite a strong contact point with, and we complement a lot of our services with massage as well. And massage is quite a strong service for us. Podiatry, occupational therapy, and others sits across things like social work and dietetics. And then we have other services as well, like nursing and health and wellness promotion, which are not mentioned in this graph. Within this exercise profile, and Turi mentioned this before, our primary focus is resistance training. That's where my background lives in relation to research. And there is no doubt about it, resistance training is king, but the most underutilized tool in the shed in relation to independence. Resistance training will help you build muscle, build power, build bone. It'll help you sleep better, and it'll help you improve your capacity around the house in your activities of daily living. And in addition to that, it'll help you push back on disease, mental and physical. It'll also give you improved flexibility, improved balance, and help you push back on hospitalisation. And if hospitalised, the duration of your stay. And the important thing about resistance training is done well, it even has residual impacts which can last up to 6 months. So it needs to be an important component. And that's the way our exercise programs are very much built. We might have a little bit of a warm-up. We might have a little bit of a cool down. There might be some stretching. Some of it might be functional movements, stepping, ladder stepping, back box stepping, things like that. But at the end of the day, some of the primary things that we do is in that very much that resistance training space, machine-based against the resistant, and always progressive. And I think that's something which is worth mentioning as well. We don't let people sit on the same weights for 6 weeks. We progressively increase their weights and their repetitions as their exercise tolerance increases. Just a quick overview of the of those group attendances. Our 3 big clinics are the blue, red, and green one that are seeing up to about 150 clients pass through a clinic per day, with about 2/3 of those clients coming specifically for group-based exercise and the remaining third for one-on-ones. Our smaller clinics are doing quite well as well, and growing and growing and growing across our 6 clinics. And the blue one's just the home care package attendance, and we've grown that quite significantly. The amount of people who are attending group classes and one-on-one classes with us through the home care package space continues to grow. So one of the things that really makes this process easy for us and the client is we work significantly on the client's health literacy. From the moment you come through the door, we're marrying why you're getting involved to how it's going to help you remain independent. And we're using very layman terms. We're using a thing called appreciative inquiry to find out about what your goals are. Oh, you don't want to, we don't stop at things like, I just want to stay in my own home for longer. We dig deeper. Why do you want to stay in your home? Is it a family thing? Is it, do you love your garden heaps? Is it a community that you're part of that you like to be close to so you can walk there and play cards or dominoes or something like that? So we dig deeper into why the client wants to be at health and wellness and what their goals are. And then we bring all that back to their involvement in health and wellness and that exercise pathway. And we carry that through and we build on that with the client with every conversation, so that they understand and they learn more about why they're involved. And that carries through in our whole relationship with the client. So quickly about our out and abouts, I did mention before that we have a level of ambulation that is required, and you can see the 3 different levels on the left of the screen. We run about 2 to 3 tours per month, and we take tours that go to theatre shows at night and involve a dinner. We go to day shows or drives up to the hills and the winery where we treat people like adults, and they have a mountain of wine and a good meal, and then they come home in the afternoon. And we find that it really helps people engage, get to know each other and have a really, really good time. And it really adds to the value and the health literacy that we're embedding about why they need to stay physically active and what the value of them being involved in those exercise pathways is. So just finishing off about the health and wellness before I look quickly at the short-term restorative care stuff. So we know that from our data that we've increased the life expectancy of the average health and wellness client to about 2 years greater than the Australian average. We also know that in as short a period as 8 weeks, people are going to be about 45% more functionally capable. And that's accompanied by improvements in their mental health and their social well-being. Our transition care, which I mentioned before, has one of the lowest incident rates and the lowest return to hospitals. And it's very much because of that multidisciplinary allied health exercise-based pathway that I've been describing today. Just bridging over some of these quickly. So our quality of life remains really, really high as well. I think that's very much based on the health literacy and the relationships that we develop with our client base. So, and that's just a representation of how high our quality of life is across our programs. I'm not going to talk to this slide. It does have some lovely photos in it, though. You can see some levels of engagement that we have across a variety of our different programs. And a lot of the things I've already talked to already. And you can see ongoing exercise participation sitting high and proud right at the top of our outcomes ladder there. So short-term restorative care, just quickly, is an 8-week government-funded program that looks to increase the client's functional well-being during that period and prescribes a allied health-driven service regime. So we have about 23 packages across South Australia and the Northern Territory. We have a clinician exercise physiologist-led model, and we use a comprehensive assessment judging people either high functioning or low functioning that then determines their service pathway. In that 8 weeks, we'll deliver it to a client up to 5 services a week. They are always allied health, and towards the last part of that 8 weeks, we'll be trying to ramp up the amount of physical activity engagement through exercise groups in home and in clinic. You can see from our the breakdown of who's delivering services into a short-term restorative care 8-week episode, our EPs, physios, and our health and wellness promoters are sitting there at the highest number of service deliveries. And our health and wellness promoters are supporting our EPs and our physios, getting clients to the gym, supporting them to do group exercise and getting them home afterwards as well. And through that intensive regime, we see really big gains in well-being. And this is across 157 different clients that we analysed. You can see that they've had an improvement in their modified Bartel, which is a questionnaire related to their functional well-being, and in their short physical performance battery, which is about 45%. And that's a measure that incorporates ambulation, balance, and lower body strength, and is a validated marker of frailty and functional well-being for clients. And so we know we're helping clients push back on functional decline to improve their capacity to remain independent. Then we have the geriatric depression scale and anxiety scale, where we have big improvements in mental health. Then we have the vitality scale, which is a marker of frailty. You can see clients are pushing back against frailty. And the EQ5D, where we know that they're having an improvement in their quality of life and also an improvement in their self-rated health. So all very, very positive measures. And this program hasn't gone unnoticed. We've just published a paper in the Australasian Journal on Aging about the value of our specific program. There goes my lights. We've also published in the sector journal, the Australasian Aging Agenda. We're doing a project at the moment looking at better care, better self-management pathways with clients. And we're looking to do a project with the Department of Health that will also look into what is the equation of discipline, service, and frequency to get the minimal clinical outcome for clients. So very, very proactive space, and definitely a space worth watching. Something which will carry through for those of you who know about aged care reform, a program which is looking to carry through into the oncoming aged care reform. So in wrapping up, so the benefits of the allied health and exercise pathways that I've been describing are irrefutable. Not only is there a ton of evidence out there, but everything that we're seeing through the health and wellness pathway speaks to it as well. It needs to be a combination of strength, conditioning, and balance. It can't be going for walks. It can't be non-progressive exercise. It can't be social groups. It can't be anything. It needs to have those components. And as I said, it needs to be progressive. People need to be regularly assessed. Their programs need to be modified, and their work needs to be increased if they're going to continue to make gains and push back on disability. The multidisciplinary pathway is an incredibly important component here as well. I don't think that exercise physiologists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists can do this alone. The more they work together, the greater the outcome for the client. In relation to how our services benefited from this evidence-based model of practice, we've had significant growth over the last 7 or so years, and we're seeing more and more people adhere to our programs for longer and longer in comparison to what would be the sector norms. And so you know, my last statement there in the working model is that none of this is rocket science. Like, nothing that we do here in health and wellness isn't already in the public space, but we've just managed to bring it all together. And if you guys are working for clinics that have that capacity, I encourage you to either contact me or contact somebody who can help you bring it all together so that you can have great outcomes that we've had for clients. And that's what it's all about. It's about that prolonging independence for clients where the evidence points to this is very, very possible. It's also cost effective for both the client and for the aged care provider, particularly where we're challenged more and more by staffing people for domestic assistance and personal care. If we can reduce the amount of work that the client needs in the care space by proactively increasing their functional well-being, then it's going to have great cost of benefit impacts for the client, for the provider, and for the government. And at the end of the day, it makes people really happy. Some of the relationships that I've seen develop in the gym, when the health and wellness gyms are as busy as all hell, some of those relationships I've seen developed are enduring and long-lasting and better than I've ever seen in any of the other clinical type environments that I've ever worked in. So that's it for me. I will stop sharing now, and hopefully we will have a few questions that might have come through on the chat line.
There is no questions, but I'll ask questions and I've made comments. You know, that I'll always ask questions. And I think before going to my questions that are pretty pedantic, I think, first of all, thank you again for your slides. You know, Tim is always a great speaker. And it doesn't matter where you're speaking. I think you always, you know, engage people and encourage the exercise. And I think the big summary is, if I try to put together a little summary, I think number one is, of course, sarcopenia. Like, we all know about osteoporosis. We all know how osteoporosis is going on because we've been talking about it for 60 years. But sarcopenia is something we still don't talk about. So sarcopenia is something the GPs still don't understand. At the end of last year, well, officially published in January this year, was an article that was titled "The Tsunami of Sarcopenia," which is that, come on, people, wake up. We need to start diagnosing this, and we need to start care. And I'm going to read something while you were talking. I was looking at my LinkedIn, and there's another article. I think people still see the argument towards strength training, and we see walking should be enough. And there was just another paper that came out and said public health importance of light intensity physical activity. And the authors are then stating there the message that health benefits can be obtained without engaging in structured, planned, moderate, vigorous physical activity, provides achievable options for all adults. I think it's important just to everyone to understand that we're not saying that any exercise is good exercise. We know that, again, it was in the guidelines of World Health Organization that every exercise is good exercise. But I think the whole point of what we're discussing here, if you want to maximize the outcome of and maximize the health benefit, that's when you need to start considering your nutrition and what you do. So I'm going to throw it to you, Tim. You know, just about this, I think it should not be seen as an argument, and it should not be saying the fact that we're promoting strength training is by no means saying that any exercise is good exercise. But I think it's also important to say that sometimes walking can be dangerous. So before the Muscle Up Against Disability and Sunbeam, there was a Cochrane review that stated that exercise is bad because they looked at walking. And if we have people who are prone for walking, that's when we fall. We know that 76% of falls is based on slips, trips, and stumbles. So we know that there's some people where walking can be dangerous. So just into you, because I know you have all your success in your thing, and also because you understand the funding. I mean, the other hurdle is that people have is the funding. Just your final statement towards the benefits. I mean, you've shown about, you know, the data, and I'm happy you're back in the research because then you can provide the evidence. It's like, what do you think are the tools so we can make this happen better, so we can make people understand that it's not an argument that strength training is good, and how to talk to the GPs and what should be doing? And again, what is the minimum exercise people should be doing to get the benefits, and what are the benefits of doing structured and well-planned exercise compared to normal other exercise? I mean, I showed it in my slide that I think the difference really of the benefits, but I'll let you put it to your words, not
you know. I think at the end of the day, I think people are essentially lazy. I think that's one of the biggest things we're up against in this space. And then when you culminate that with the aging process and all the other things that start to overwhelm you with aging, when you finally get to that point where it's hard to get out of your chair, and we're talking about people being in their mid-70s by now, when it's hard to get out of the chair, when it's hard to climb up the stairs, when you're starting to feel like you're not so great even on 2 feet anymore, the idea of the gym is not sitting front of mind. The idea of exercise is not sitting front of mind because you've got all this other stuff that starts to go on. I would love to see a government message. I would love to see it's not too late. If you're over 65, it's not too late type of message. And I do think government is sitting up and taking note. Like, I've had a lot of strong conversations with government recently around the reform process. And I think they are looking, how can we incorporate more allied health? How can we bring exercise into this? How can we build evidence into our reform packages? But then our next barrier will be the aged care provider, because it's not common practice, and a lot of your universities are graduating people to the NDIS or private practice. So even if the aged care provider space jumped on it and said, okay, we're going to do this, then is there enough staff out there to actually do it? So we're talking about a lot of barriers, but I think those individual conversations, everybody who's in this group here today, then going to say to their grandmother or their grandfather or even their parents, starting a conversation about, I've heard this works, this could work for you. And we start chipping away at this as an individual thing. And then when that grandparent is next down at their social club or playing cards, or their grandmum's gone to play mahjong, not trying to stereotype or anything like that, but they then have conversations with the people at the table about, oh, you've gotten up easier. You seem to be climbing the stairs easier. Oh, you're not holding onto the railing while you're going down. And you change public perspective around positive conversations. You break down all that rubbish about, oh, I know somebody who got hurt when they went to the gym. Oh, no, exercise is not for me. I don't like sweating. You break down those negative stereotypes and you positively reinforce, I could do this. I'm really enjoying it. I don't miss it. I go twice a week. And I think that's a better place to start, because I've been beating this drum for near on 25 years. You know that. You've been there along with me for a lot of it. We've been beating that drum for a long time, and still only 1 in 10 people are achieving the exercise guidelines. So let's take a different tactic. Let's chip away at it one by one by one by one by one, and let's make it a personal vision, a mission to actually change somebody's attitude this week to why they should engage in exercise, support them to remain engaged, and support them to tell other people to get engaged.
I think I like that. I really like it. And I think we're lucky. Like, I'm lucky. Last week I was in Adelaide, and I went to a 50+ gym, and I went to a retirement village, and I went to a resi care in rural South Australia, really emphasizing this. So we find the good places, but I think obviously the funding, ACFI turned into ANAC, has been a bit of a nightmare. Those who work in the industry know what I'm talking about, and not respecting the allied health. And I've just calculated from your percentages, so it was 65% of your stuff was given by physios and exercise physiologists. So that's the value, and we can only hope for the change. And look, I had a grandma who was riding a bike at 87, and in the end she got vascular dementia after 90. And I don't know if many of you saw, there was an older lady in Adelaide who was the oldest Australian. She was exercising until 111. I mean, she passed away, she was more than 111. And so you're never too frail. And I think that's another key point of your talk. It's really, you're never too frail. You're never, ever too frail. And I'm
going to jump on there's 3 questions here currently.
Yes.
So Ray, there's already some good stuff going on in Queensland. And so we are Southern Cross Care, South Australia, Northern Territory and Vic are having conversations with Queensland. So hopefully we will be able to integrate something like that up there in the near future. I'd love to see that model spread. In the interim, there's some great work being done in the north in Burnie Bray. So if you have clients who would value from going to the gym, look up what Burnie Bray is doing. And then to Ahmad, in the residential aged care space, I'm a great believer. I love the short physical performance battery. Now, I described it before. It is very much set up for frail older adults. So look into that. There's a lot of evidence around it and a lot of work around the protocols as well. And even if you put in SPPB and go to images, you'll get a really good describer of how to use the 3 different measures within that. And then you can create the summary score. And the summary score will actually then allow you to say, is that person at risk of falls, frailty, declining functional well-being, disability, mortality, institutionalisation? There is so much research in that space. And then just reading your...
Can I just add a comment to that?
Yeah.
So the Sunbeam actually used SPBB. So, and what I can do, I can actually link that. I can put that to the webinar, post-webinar link as well, put all the details. And also, of course, the Australian government actually used the promoted Sunbeam to be the care model to be offered everyone. So Jenny Hewitt, Dr. Jenny Hewitt, who was the main researcher, and Tim was supervising Jenny. So there's videos about all of this. So I can I can make a little Sunbeam package there. So we can offer all that information. But SPBB, you can even follow the protocol, and there's a protocol to be used at the gym or without the gym. So all the materials there, I'll put links to that. And then I'll let Tim answer the 3rd question.
And so the third question again, Ahmad, is very much like, Turi said it before in the slide from the World Health Organization, something is better than nothing. But for residents who can't get to regular exercise, in-room exercise can be incredibly good. Basic chair stands, mobilizing, standing, balance, even the utilization seated of bands and small dumbbells, it can all have great value for an older client. In our residential aged care facilities, we actually have a push trolley that we take round from room to room for people who are not able to mobilise outside of their room or to leave their room. And we've had great benefits with some of that, and we have quite a high level of mobilising until mortality in our residential aged care space because of it.
Spot on. And I think it's I've had a friend of mine, look, we always discuss this topic, always with all my friends, because we have parents in the same age. One of the recent conversations was, again, the differentiating even between palliative care and end-of-life care. And we have some sites where they have gyms, even in palliative care, dementia wards, because anyone can exercise and you deserve to have the quality of life until the end. And even until the end of life care might be 48 hours, might be 24 hours. So we can't define that. So I think we can never give up on ourselves, and we can never give up on anyone else. And I think anyone who works in allied health, I think we should always be there promoting. Yes, there are hurdles. There are hurdles in many different ways. So whether it's people not wanting, but also the funding or trying to convince the managers. However, we have great stories. And like if you ever go to look at I write a blog for our company, and I try to share the stories from people. And just last weekend, we happened to be in mainstream media. There was one client who was talking about this, and it is getting there. We will get there. I think we'll have to believe that we will get there. But until we get there, let's encourage everyone and ourselves. I mean, it's sometimes it'll be great when you're tired to sit on the sofa and do nothing, but it's a matter of saying, nah, I'm going to go to the gym, and even if I yawn, and even though every second is not a jolly time, but it's important. And I think the ones who really need to take responsibility is like, you need to be responsible for yourself and be a role model and try to encourage people. But I'm looking at the time, we're past 5 o'clock, and I think it's time to wrap up. So I'm going to say thank you. Tim can have his final words, but I'm going to be thanking everyone who's joined us again. And it's been 4 years and we're still here, so I'm grateful for everyone who's joined. Tim has been our speaker a billion times. Thankfully, I've known Tim since before I joined HUR, so I can keep on asking him over and over again, because I know it's always gold, and I know that we always share the information. So thank you, Tim. Thank you to everyone. Tim, any final words?
Look, yeah, I know my slide's down now, but my email was up on that last slide. Turi's going to share those slides with you, so you're welcome to contact me for further questions or quiz me about any ideas. Look, as Turi said before, like I think Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So, the more support, the more targeted, the more you understand this demographic, and the more you actually support them to actually integrate into this space, the more people that will integrate. I think there's just a whole lot of people out there who don't even know, just do not even know the value. And so one by one, we need to get them into gyms and get them well.
That sounds perfect. All right, it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much. We'll send everyone who's registered will get the link. So we'll have our post-webinar link with all the slides. I'll try to put the Sunbeam package there, Tim's new article. So we'll put there as much information as possible, but we can always, please send Tim an email, send us an email. And if you have any ideas for webinars, we'll keep on doing this because it's great fun. Thank you again for everybody for joining, and we will see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.